Hi, welcome to class. We're the only two right now, but the other ones will show up eventually, right? I hate my life. I hate my life. A Professor Sunreis Productions! Hello class, Professor Sunreis here. First of all, sorry for not posting. My girlfriend had a friend over here for the whole weekend, so I didn't really have the time to record anything. Second of all, thank you all for getting me to over 200 subscribers by now. I appreciate every single one of you leaving feedback, leaving ideas, leaving deck ideas down in the comment section below. It really means a lot to me. And I'm also working on doing more community related stuff. I want to open a Discord server, so if you're interested in that, let me know. I also want to start maybe doing some community tournaments here and there, maybe like some small tournaments in my Discord server then over either remote, so with webcam, or on Dueling Book. Maybe the first place can even get some, because I really want to get something to win, of course, because I really want to get into casting. I really want to step up my game there because I'm really interested in that. And so without further ado, let's start talking about the video. So in this video, I'm gonna get over my current Brave Punk virtual list, which I've been cooking up now with the letter actually being there. I got a way more realistic approach to the deck and how the meta is actually gonna shape up. There's way more flow and running around, which I anticipated. So I did a few switches here and there. I'm with the main deck, I'm like 100% happy. The side and extra deck, there's still a few slots which I've been testing out with, so I will definitely let you know what I will do with that if I switch anything up. But for now, this list is looking pretty clean. So without further ado, don't forget to like and subscribe and leave some feedback like always down below. Let's get right into this in-depth deck profile. So here we are in the profile, and before we go card by card, let's really quickly talk about the theory I had with the deck. So as you all know, with Path of the Elements being released and Splight and Tiered Elements, but especially Plight being in the format, the meta got a huge power creep, as Splight is just a very strong engine, probably stronger than all of the other one-card engines, or like more or less one-card engines out there, as it ends on like 1 hard negate, 2 hard negates with a Toad if they get to revive it. They also play a shit ton of hand traps. So the meta is getting way faster. So it didn't make sense for me to go for a mid-rangey approach with Virtual World, where we go for like a decent board like Crystal Ring, Shen Shen, Chucha, and then get like a few hand traps in there as well, as the hand traps just don't really do enough anymore. Virtual World cannot really play more than 9 hand traps, and 9 hand traps is not nearly enough right now to have consistent enough defensive cards against those strong decks. So I decided to completely switch it up and go from a mid-rangey deck with nice card advantage to a full-on combo deck with still pretty decent follow-up, as we still have GG at back plus Qinglong, which is a lot of follow-up for a deck like this. If you compare it to like Base, for example, which has a very similar game plan, they have next to no follow-up. But it's still very strong, and doing so, you really increase the consistency by not only the new support in the Punk, but also making it that we are not really concerned about card advantage too much. I decided to put in a Pot of Prosperity into this list, and it's been working out very well, because we don't really care about the draw 2. We don't really care to draw into hand traps mid combo, because we don't play them. We can just play the Prosperity and basically have an increased consistency. I'm gonna list the chart of consistencies here, and as you can see, Prosperity basically acts as another copy of a Virtual World name, as it's a 95 or 96% chance to see one with it. So it really just completely increases consistency at the small cost of decreasing our card advantage. But like I said, GG at back plus a Cypher should be more than enough to win you most of the game. So let's get into the card by card. This is, by the way, a 45 card deck list, but the math checks out as you saw earlier. So it just really makes sense. And in my opinion, this deck is feeling kind of good into the new format. It does have a decent matchup against both Splight and Tier Elements, just because Chucha is really good against Splight, and Chen Shen still does have some applications against Tier Elements as well. So guys, it is okay. Virtual World is doing fine, guys. It is doing fine. So, of course, the Virtual Worlds, we just max out every single one of them. Mostly because of the consistency, not only because of the consistency. Still on 3 Lao, even though you don't really want to draw it. Liddy, because we are playing the John Woo, spoiler alert, is also becoming really good, and I'm starting to appreciate it, and now I can finally see it speaking like the second best Virtual World probably to open with, just because it gives you so many option and extension routes thanks to the John Woo. For the rest of the virtual package, of course, we play the 1 Neon. Don't need more than that. Of course, still on 3 Kowloon. Still on 2 Qinglong. I don't see a reason to play more of this. You just don't want to draw it. And 2 is more than enough to get the engine rolling. 2 Chucha and 1 Jianwu finally. I decided to play the Jianwu mostly for the reason that now we don't play hand traps. So we don't really care about what we draw with our Virtual. We just need to see Virtuals to get going. And if you hard draw this is still access an extender. Especially going second, this can help you to get it earlier into the grave than usual, just so that you have that rod of extension available to you. So it's not really the worst to draw. With the P.U.N.K engine, you also have an additional discard. So you really just want to get useful cards into the graveyard as soon as possible, and Jianwu just gets you going there. And also, we don't really care about card advantage at all, so just having that additional discard opens up a lot of combos where you can actually get into the scythe log with like very few resources available to you. So that's the virtual engine. Only really the Jianwu added to that. Now for the Brave stuff, we don't really have space here anymore. I'm gonna quickly zoom out. For the Brave stuff, of course, 3 Enchantress, 1 Ride, 1 Fateful, and then the 1 Griffin and the 1 Draco back. It's pretty self-explanatory. This is the ratio I've been using a lot. I kind of want to play more Ride because the deck kind of struggles if the Brave engine gets negated because it's on the only way into a level 4, which is why I kind of wanted to play the Trick Clown package. So just 1 Trick Clown to send with Beatrice, but I honestly don't see the space for that. And if you play it out smart, a lot of times you don't even need that. It's super fine to just go into like a Shen Shen, Chucha, Snow board against Splight as well, because if you get rid of 2 of their bodies, which they cannot even Dark Ruler you've on, that's more than enough. And if this resolves, you just win the game basically. Like I said, I wanted to play more of it, but honestly the space is just not there sadly for this deck. So you can't really go for that. And then for the P.U.N.K engine, of course, 3 Emergency Teleport also supports the virtual engine directly. I ultimately decided to just play the smallest P.U.N.K engine available, so only one of all the good ones, the Armin, Foxy Tune. You know, they can brick really hard. Honestly, Foxy Tune is probably the least bricky. You can still get into the engine if you draw it plus virtual. But honestly, they just suck to draw, which is also why I increased the deck size, just to make it so that we have a less higher likelihood of drawing any of these bricks. You still have the Draco back, you have this, you have these. There's a shit ton of cards you don't really want to draw, but they help you if you have playable hands, of course. But yeah, the P.U.N.K engine is just really insane. It's just a true 1-card combo you get of this. It just feels super nice. Getting you into the virtual engine with just 1 card makes Prosperity even better because you have like 1-card combos now. So I really like the P.U.N.K engine. I would always play it. I even see it higher than the Brave engine. The problem is just that it is super susceptible to hand traps, which don't really hurt you in the first place. Stuff like Imperm and Veiler, you didn't really care about those before. So that's the problem. And then add to that it takes up your normal summon, and it can only really play through hand traps if you play a shit ton of them. And then you have like no space for anything whatsoever. And even then, Imperm or Veiler on the new Synchro still gets so much value out of you because you don't get into the virtual. And if you committed your normal summon, you didn't even get a virtual for it in your hand. It just feels kind of bad. So in my opinion, just playing the smallest package available does make the most sense. You could get away with playing 2Z Armor and then cutting the Brave engine, but the Brave engine just feels so broken. I would not really advise you to do that. And then lastly, for consistency, the 30 Pot of Prosperity, it just rounds up the deck so well. You've seen the math with it. There's such a high likelihood of using a virtual with this. It just feels so good to play. Basically 6 new virtuals with 3 Emergency Teleport and 3 Pod. It just is so nice. Also, it is a really weird way to use it in this deck. I'm going to show you the banishes of later. But honestly, you always go for 6 with it, because if you go for 3 with it, it's not worth it. You might as well just use it as a discard and then go for a draw 2. So going first, I only use it as 6, basically as my first or second option to get an additional name, get a Brave engine going to play through 1 hand trap if I have to. But if I don't have to do it because I already have like Enchantress, Kowloon, Lulu, or any other name, I will almost always just use it as a discard outlet and then go for a draw 2 combo because it's just more card advantage, of course. Going second is differently. I basically always use it just to fish for a board breaker. But yeah, it's definitely not like an auto activate in every hand in this deck, because we still have the draw 2 combo with the Synchro 6s, so we want to utilize that. For like engine requirements and stuff to send with Snow, we have Scythe, with Beatrice, we have Scythe and Snow. Snow is so strong, it is really unreal. And with us being more into the discards, we don't really care too much about drawing them. Because if you draw one of them, we have access to all of them basically, because we go into Beatrice. Usually you send Enchantress Scythe, but if you have Scythe already hard drawn, you can send a Snow and you have an additional disruption if the opponent is disrupting you. So that is feeling very strong. And then lastly, for board breakers, 3 Droplet and 3 Dark Ruler. You've seen the math. It is not the highest likelihood of succeeding in game 1 if you lose the die roll. But the engine themselves can break boards quite well. So as long as you don't get Scythe locked, you should be fine. The Brave engine is really good at breaking boards. The Punk engine, not so much. I always side it out going second, just because it's never gonna go through regardless. And then I might as well want to get a virtual on the field and start playing immediately with the virtuals. Even though the consistency is getting a little lower because of that, in my opinion, it should be worth it. Just because while they are in theory a virtual name, you will never get to resolve them going second. So might as well not even try and get more defensive cards going, which you definitely need, because 6 in a 45 card deck list is pretty lackluster, to be real. So that's it for the main deck. Honestly, it's been working out quite well, and I'm super happy with the main deck. It's just the side and the extra deck which I've been struggling with, or not struggling, but just experimenting with and not being too sure what to send there. So let's get into the extra deck. We have 1 Beatrice, super strong card, of course. This is the most important card in the extra deck. It sets up basically all of your engines. It gets you to the Brave, gets you to Snow, gets you to Scythe. This is the most important card. Don't shy away of setting up Chucha now to protect this. It is super important, in my opinion, to do to resolve this, to get to your Brave stuff, to get like your standard board of like Baron, Chucha, Dawn, Dragster. You can also, depending on the hand, of course, leave this on and don't protect it, or don't dodge a Veiler and Imperm with it, and then just send a Snow, depending on if you have the graveyard set up for it going. That's basically my thought process with that. Then for additional stuff we do with the Brave engine, of course, we have we have Baron, we have Dawn Dragster, usually end on these, just because this goes into the Scythe lock, and then you have a Dawn Dragster plus Chucha to protect the Scythe lock against Chalices, against droplets, against everything which basically targets it, and everything which is monster related usually hits it before Baron gets into the extra deck, so you can hit like a Crow, for example, with the Baron. So it usually goes through if you get there, which is of course really cool. Then lastly, 1 Shenging. I am not 100% sure about it. I haven't actually made it a lot, but in theory we can always go for the Shenging, Shanshan, Chucha, Baron line, and then have Snow and Graveyard. So we can play with that. It just never really came up because I could always go for Scythe lock instead. But in theory, it can still come up, and it's also our way to out, hard to out boss monsters. This gets super high on attack value, especially with Snow. Most importantly, it is a non-targeting, non-destruction removal, which is the only one we have, so I think I still will play it. You would just not make it a shit ton of times. Then for the Punk stuff, this is the new Punk Synchro. Mine hasn't arrived yet, so if you're the person who sent it to me, please hurry the fuck up, I need it. 1 Galaxy Eyes Photon Lord. This is usually the one you make, because this gives you a monster negate to protect your plays from going through afterwards. So that's really good. It is something to be on the end board as well, but if you're Scythe locking, so if your combo goes through after this resolves, you would usually Scythe lock them, and then this doesn't matter that it is an extra additional negate, but it's just there to protect the combos. And lastly, 1 Hulk of Fibrax. If you only have emergency teleport, this is a way to get into the into the virtual engine. Thing is, you've seen the math. You have like a 95% chance of seeing a virtual. emergency teleport being included. The chance of seeing 2 virtuals is super high, so this rarely ever comes up, but I still want to play it for it to come up, because I feel like in the extra deck I want to prioritize the cards which enable my plays to go through over stuff like utility cards. So there's no Fan, for example, in this deck, because I just don't have the space. There's no Crystal Wing package. There's no Gaia Charge Warrior, just because I want to maximize my chance of actually getting into my engine. And while Hulk Firex rarely ever comes up, the time where he comes up, I will just be so happy to play. And the utility is still there, because we still, of course, have a lot of main deck utility as well with the Chucha. For Synchro 6s, of course, we still play the 2 draw persons. Drawing card feels nice. Standard virtual stuff, of course. And then 1 Juju, still a very solid card, especially with Prosperity, where you will always banish these. You definitely need a Synchro 6, 1 Shen, and I'm playing 1 Vermilion Dragon, with Janwoo being available to us. Qinglong plus Lily is combo. Because of the Vermilion Dragon, it is also a second Synchro 9, which I always wanted to play, but there was just no good one. And it is a toolbox card, so it fits all the niches which you want, enabling plays and being a toolbox card to out different stuff. Feels super strong. It doesn't really come up all too much. This is an easy Prosperity banish as well, but it is what it is. Then 1 Break Sword, 1 M7, and 1 Zeus for the XZs. Pretty standard. So let's talk about Prosperity banishes. An easy banish going first is always the Break Sword, because we usually don't need it. Then also in Hulky Fibrex, if you have a virtual already in your hand, you can easily just banish the Hulky Fibrex, because you won't need it. And then I always like to banish either one of them, depending on the matchup. Let's just say the Dawn Dragster, because we just don't really need it. And then, of course, easy banishes are always the 2 Synchro guys, which draw. You will not utilize them at all in the turn. Sometimes you want to keep the Coral Dragon, depending on what happens. For example, if you already resolved your Punk engine or got disrupted, you will always banish them, of course, and you can keep those. But usually you just banish them. And then lastly, you banish this if you don't have a Qinglong in your hand, for example. You will never use it. So if you have Qinglong, for example, only Qinglong and then no other stuff, you definitely want to keep this. For example, if you only get a Lily, you want to have full combo of that. What are additional banishes, of course, is the Punk stuff if you already resolved it. So this is the Punk, of course. If you already resolved the Punk engine or it got disrupted, you can easily banish out of all of them. For example, if the armor gets impermed, you banish out all 3 of them. Of course, you could get a Foxy Tune, but at this point it's a super low likelihood, and then you'd rather save the extra deck for more grindy game. In theory, you can also banish out 1 Zeus, for example, if your hand is like super bad and you really need to keep this, and you haven't resolved the Punk engine yet. You can also banish out a Zeus. Keep in mind that you can always recycle one of them. Because of Nian, and you will most of the time do it in the combo just to get your extra resources back there. But overall, what you want to know is that you never want to banish any of these. They are just way too important for your for the game plan, especially. I mean, basically every single one of them. They're way too important. And changing basically also because, especially game 1, you don't know what you're playing. You don't want to banish your 1 out against all these hard-to-out monsters. And this is also basically your Fan because you don't play it anymore. And you really want to be able to interact with the opponent's graveyard. So that's the broad and very basic guide on how to Prosperity banish with them. Like I said, only basically Prosperity for 6. I haven't never Prosperity for 3 in my whole testing with the deck, just because it doesn't really make sense. Like I said, the draw is way too important. Now for the side deck. This is where I'm even more concerned than the extra deck. By the way, the flex spots were basically the 1 Hulky Fibrex. The Vermilion Dragon was the flex spot, but I really started to like it. So it's basically just that 1 Hulky Fibrex where I'm like, maybe a Fan. But then Fan is not really as good if you don't play the Gaia Charge with it. And Gaia Charge, you would need to take out the Vermilion for it, and then it just doesn't make sense in my opinion. So because we need to get 2 spaces going, the Fanfan alone is probably not worth it, and with a charge warrior it would be, especially because we always will have a Beatrice on the field with no material, and if you play Guard Charge, we could actually get a Zeus out of it on the crackback if it's needed. So let's get into the side deck. For going first, we have 2 anti-spell. I'm still on it just because Dark Ruler is everywhere. While we play around it, it just makes a lot of sense for me, because this is a card which is good against both combo and most importantly against stuff like Untitled, where I have a really hard time dealing with them, just because our main game plan doesn't really affect them too much. So I really like the anti-spell. It's still performing quite well, even though of course it is quite bad against Splice, for example, because they have the starter. It does, in my opinion, works best with what we are accomplishing. For example, it does stop the Brave Engine from coming out. So if you basically only have Scythe Lock, and the opponent could in theory get into the game with like a Brave Engine, because they hand tripped us to death, for example, this protects us from that. One Caught by the Grave, the deck plays through hand traps quite easily, and I was never really a fan of Caught by in the main deck, because it feels bad to Ash anything or to Caught by any of this low impact hand traps, because a lot of times you will just have an additional name to play through them, and then you are missing the discard. Post side, Droll could definitely still be a card in the format right now. It's probably not too popular, but I really want to be prepared for that. It also is an interruption if the opponent doesn't have anything, or at worst, it's just a discard. So I really like the Caught by in there. And then 3 Nibiru. These were, I think, Artifact Sanctums, because I was really looking for a Floodgate type effect for first turn, which is hitting basically everything. And I came to the conclusion that Sanctum, while it is really good, Nib basically does the job just as good, because there are very few decks which out your board and play through a Nib. Of course, this is only really good if we have a board with it, and if not, it's very suboptimal, because Nib is not really that good right now if it's the only hand trap. But it should be fine. We usually will get into the game and get some sort of disruption going on, so the opponent has to play into the Nib. And most importantly, there will still be a lot of random decks, a lot of Marincess, a lot of Attic Nister, for example, a lot of Salad, especially on the regional level, which is basically all I'm playing, or on Dueling Book right now. So Nib being in the side deck feels just super strong, because it's just an auto-win card against everything, and especially on Dueling Book, where like there are 2 or 3 high-rated Attic Nister players out there. I basically had no out to the deck whatsoever, because I'm not playing any hand traps, no draw, nothing. I just really want at least one good card against them. Then I'm playing 1 Lancia. I did not really test it yet, but in theory, this is the one card we want against the Untitled matchup, where we, instead of Scythe locking, we will Lancia lock them. This makes it so that they cannot really contest for the board. They cannot evenly us, most importantly, and just it's important that they don't get into the resource loop, and this is where Lancia really helps. They can't evenly us, so we are safe from them just getting completely rid of all of our resources. They will mine us while they try to commit into the board, and most importantly, they will never be able to crack the board without an evenly, and they don't even get their engine rolling. So next turn, I can just easily OTK them, or if I can't OTK them, they won't have any resource to follow up into the game. So in theory, Lancia should be very good against especially that. I wanted to play the Zombie World lock, but then those are 2 cards, which I didn't have the space for, which of course locked them out of the game even harder. But a Lancia should be all I need against that matchup. For back row hate, we play 2 Galaxy Cyclone, 2 Cosmic Cyclone, 1 Galaxy Cyclone, just because we always want to go for Beatrice, and just having a good send against all of the control decks out there is really good. Also, Galaxy Eyes Photon Lord can equip this out of the deck, so you can tutor it out with that as well, and making it so that it's an Crystal Wing type effect, so negate and destroy, which of course is really cool. And overall, going first, it doesn't really matter. Going second, what you draw, you'll just hit some of the back row. This is mainly against Exorcistes, which I've been struggling with just because they end on 2 to 3 banishes, and Virtual kind of struggles to play into that. 1 Reboot and 1 Pankratops is more paid against back row, so these are 5 back row cards together with 1 called by most of the time, is what I'm siding in against stuff like Exorcister or what's it called, Eldritch. And then lastly, for hard combo decks, 3 Lava Golem. This it looks so awful in the camera, holy shit. This does conflict with our normal summon, but honestly, going second, if you rely on your normal summon to resolve to get into the virtual engine, you are losing anyways. And with Prosperity, Emergency Teleport, Kowloon, Qinglong, there are so many ways to get a virtual on the field without committing your normal summon. In my opinion, it's just needed. We need 9 outs against a Cyphlog with Hulky Fibrex, because we just need to play the game, of course. And this is also really good against basically every deck. So it's just the best board breaker. We need cards to go at least 2 for 1 in our favor post boarding to start cracking boards and getting into the game. And Lava Golem is just the best card for this. This could also be a Sphere mode. I just haven't tested it yet. I just wanted to make sure. 2 is usually more than enough to break, but this could easily be a Sphere mode as well. So yeah, that has been it for the deck. Overall, like I said, the main deck is looking pretty clean. The side deck here and there, some switches could be made. The extra deck, like I said, as well, 1 to 2 cards. Depending on the meta and how it will exactly shape out, you can definitely make some switches or do some changes on your preference. For example, if you don't like the Lava Golem, you could definitely cut them out. I am a sucker for the meta, and I will definitely adapt to it as necessary as possible, even if it makes my own engine a little worse. Like I said earlier on, we are not playing like the cool mid-rangey type virtual, which is very strong engine resource-wise, how many that generate. We are completely full on combo deck right now with just the minimal amount of follow-up which we can get. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave some feedback down below. Class is dismissed. You guys are free to leave. Professor Sunreis out. Peace.